Welcome to the 2025 edition of the James Reaney Memorial Lecture, an annual series celebrating the legacy of two London literary icons, my late parents, James Jamie Reaney and Colleen Thibaudeau. And Colleen Thibaudeau gave the first lecture back in 2010. Whoa. Oh.
She's with us.
She's with us. My mom would ring a bell to remind us when it was time to come inside. This year's lecture is titled Colleen Thibaudeau's Big C Vision. It is a big part of Colleening 2025, which has been a year-long celebration of what would have been our, and I mean London, but I can say our, meaning the world, our greatest poets' centenary. Colleen's friend and fellow London poet Peggy Roffey will help us navigate this afternoon's Big C Vision, which was also the title of Peggy's MA thesis on Colleen Thibaudeau's poetry. I am James Stewart Reaney, a co-organizer, along with my sister, Susan Reaney, of Galiano Island, BC, of the lecture series. Hello to Susan and her family, who are here all the way from British Columbia. Wow. And I think drove through snow and whatever else on the way from the Toronto airport last night. Thank you. It's great to see you. We may have more family here. Is there anybody who's vaguely a Thibaudeau or a Crerar or something? If so, there may be some of you out there in the land. Thank you to all the friends and allies here in the Lawson Room, or those of us who are joining virtually via the Words Festival live stream. Welcome. We can feel the online and in-person love. We are grateful to our co-presenters, the London Public Library, and this is the second lecture at a London Public Library. And Words, which welcomed the lecture to London after its first years were under the Stratford Public Library and Poetry Stratford banner. Thanks as always to ex-LPLer Karen Doyle for guiding the lecture to Words, and to Josh Lumbier over at the back there, working his Words live stream tech magic for helping us to flourish under the Words banner. Before welcoming Peggy and our special lecture guest, Hilary Neary, let's take a moment to reflect on Colleening 2025. At last year's lecture, we said we'd hope to celebrate the legacy of Colleen Thibaudeau in 2025, her centenary year. Our friends at Alvego Root Theatre inspired the title for those grassroots celebrations with the 2013 play Colleening, an original combination of her poems and letters. That was all we really had on the radar for 2025 at this session last year. Among the greatest joys of Colleening 2025 has been Alvego Root's marvelously musical revival of the play. We said we also hope to have a reading in St. Thomas to salute Mum's Elgin County roots. So, St. Thomas poet and Mum's friend Julie Berry curated a wonderful evening at the Elgin County Railway Museum in September. Please join me in acknowledging Julie and Peggy for asking that instead of their being paid a fee as organizers of these particular events, a donation be made to a charity by Colleening 2025's private sponsors, and the sponsors are happy to do that. In Julie's case, it was the Railway Museum, and for Peggy, it's the London Food Bank. As we acknowledge, let's remember charitable giving as part of this holiday season. In welcoming Peggy Roffey, I am recalling the moving Big C vision words she shared as a eulogist at Colleen's funeral in 2012. And as those memories are misting me, I'm buoyed by a maritime report recently from Peggy. I think it was maybe a Friday maritime report, and about our readers, Patricia Black and Ola Novosad, who are here. This is the message. The two readers and I had a practice this afternoon, and all is going swimmingly in the Big C. See you tomorrow, meaning Saturday.
Be careful what you email.
Please welcome our Big C Vision mariner, Peggy Roffey, and her crew to the James Reaney Memorial Lecture stage and Colleening 2025. Sail on, friends. It says here, thank you for that gracious introduction. Sir, Peggy, thank you. Fantastic. And thank you.
Well, thank you for that gracious introduction. I wrote that. I have to do something here. I want to get back to the first slide, Dan. Meanwhile, thank you very much to Alana for setting up this room. I thought we would only need 12 chairs. I always underestimate in time and space and money. And also to our new Dan Hamilton, new to the London Public Library, who is a savior, and always to Josh. Josh Lambier is the great handholder of technophobes. Yes. So, and thank you all for coming out. And to people who are not here in body and perfect, in present, in, what am I saying? In person, thank you very much. Thank you. I need a wordsmith. Especially Nancy Towski, who very much wanted to be here. Hi, Nancy. And my two daughters, far flung. Hi, Martha and Dara. And to anyone else who is joining us today in spirit. Okay. Thank you, Hillary, for that amazing odyssey of getting lozenges. And it's a very appropriate start because it was done with love. And if there's any single word that sums up Colleen, her life, and her poetry, is love. Thank you. To get us started today, in our dip into the great big sea vision of poet Colleen Thibaudeau, I'm going to ask you to do something interactive. When I was first asked to do a lecture, and I saw that it was 2 hours long, I did teach. I taught 3-hour Renaissance and English Lit courses at Western on Thursday evenings, 3 hours. I never spoke for more than 20 minutes at a time. It was all interactive. I had to keep them awake, right? So what I'm going to ask you to do, I'll give you 10 seconds, and when the 10 seconds are up, I will ring our bell. And I'd like you just to go quiet, and whoever is near and dear to your heart just pops into your mind. So just get that person in your mind for 10 seconds. I'll count. Have you got that person in mind? The example is my mother. When she walks into my mind, she is long gone. I hear the midsection of the Appassionata Sonata by Beethoven, the Adagio Cantabile, slowly and singingly. Her step was Adagio Cantabile. So you've got a person in mind. Now take another 10 seconds, and whatever pops into your mind, that's something associated with them. Anything, an object, anything. Okay, 10 seconds. Okay, now if you would just share that with someone beside you, behind you, across the room, 15 seconds, go for it. Just share the person and the thing, the association. Time to come into bed, children. Colleen. Thank you for doing that. You can continue that conversation afterwards, because I'm sure it just was a tip of your memories. You've all just done a bit of Colleening, right? That is, you've used memory and imagination to reach beyond time and space. You found an association, made a connection, and it had that associated detail there. You've also connected to somebody else in the room. You've touched on the way Colleen wrote her poems. They are peopled, very peopled, full of significant objects, places, experiences, but all attached to people. I actually counted the number of people that she named by name or role. 500. 500 people in just over 200 poems. So it is really like what she says, a lacy broil. You know, they're all there. And the poems are little vignettes, very story-like, and woven of memory and imagination. So to have found just one person whose existence had made a home inside you at some point, you must have exercised what Canadian poet Don Mackay called poetic attention. That is, an active and open receptivity, the irreducible otherness of some other creature. Okay? As Don put it wittily, in your attention, you may have burst into ontological applause. You celebrated their being at all. Okay. Such attention loops in what's outside you, expands I'm watching this, expands you, expands that moment of perception, expands your world. That's what happens to the speaker of Colleen's poem, This Elastic Moment. It's what she experiences when she pays attention to the people, places, things, times of day, and weather she passes on her bicycle. Yes, we are that too. We are everything who feel it. Everything that has meaning has the same meaning as angels. Hi, Colleen. Thank you. These hovers and whirs occupied with us. For Colleen, it is some mysterious angelic power that causes those we've seen and paid attention to return to our consciousness. They inhabit us and dispel our solitude. They occupy us and are occupied with us. They infuse meaning into our lives. In this elastic moment, two figures who are now part of the speaker's inner life are the man who sits in his shirt sleeves every blessed Sunday, rasping away at his child who is catching some sunshine. In the following lines, Colleen may be describing how her poems, but definitely how her memories form. Get their fit, man and child. Let this elastic moment stretch out in me till that point where they are inside and invisible. Time expands. It's full of life. What's been seen and held in the crucible of deep attention with an open heart and mind may come back again because it is now a part of you. In one little poem on Salt Spring, where are you from, she says that they forgot the camera one day, but she says, but they're in here, and their poppies are brighter for that, you know. So, you know, I often worry about kids with their phones. They're not experiencing the world physically. What are they going to keep in their minds? Yeah. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. And when the band of the, yes. Okay. When the band of the moment breaks, there will come some angelic recurrence. This recurrence that she finds angelic is a sudden illuminating and solitude breaking, snapping back into consciousness of the invisible, a meaningful reprise of that which has been experienced, seen, or better word, beheld. Finding the world occupied with us in today's academic thinking may be considered distasteful anthropomorphism, a colonizing move. But in Colleen's poetry, attention to the world beyond the self makes beholder and beheld part of a larger world, an integrated world, a home in essence, her inclusive Big C vision. Okay. Alongside those 500 named by either name or role, we also find groups like exploited weavers, Inuit, those long-gone parcels of suffering dear Chinese poets, tomato pickers, unnamed relatives, and neighbors, children, soldiers. There are a lot of memories of war in her poems. The fact that so many people are gathered into her work is our first inkling that her Big C vision is the warp of this loose-woven body of poetry. I want to dedicate our time together to three people very much present to my mind and heart. Jean Mackay, London musician, author, and originator and editor of the Brick Journal of Reviews and the thriving Brick publishing house of poetry, Brick Books. Her partner in creating both the journal and Brick Books, beloved and remembered Western professor Stan Dragland, novelist, midwife to umpteen poets, editor, literary critic, friend to many, and darn good singer and ukulele player. Co-founder of Brick Books is Don Mackay, poet par excellence, great polymath, who is now living and writing in Newfoundland. So to them. Now, Jean Mackay, beloved woman, was a great supportive friend to the Reaney family. In 1975-76, when her kids were just young, she took the time to look through multiple Canadian literary journals to find what Colleen had lost track of since her university days, her published poems and short stories. Jean put those together with copies of poems Colleen had on hand, and this is what she produced. There they are. What a pile. Among these, she found 10 poems that in 1975 she and Stan and Don turned into their first utterly memorable production, this chapbook, 10 Letters. If you read nothing but this 10 Letters by Colleen, you will get the essence of what she writes about, what she cares about, and how the miraculous way she puts a poem together. That was reissued in 79 and in 84. Stan gave me that fat folder, and after long labor, the next slide was born in 78, my master's thesis. It took 2 years to get that one out. So we called it Colleen Thibaudeau's Big C Vision. Thanks for mentioning that, James. Jean and Stan dedicated Brick 5, the magazine of reviews, to Colleen's work, and included my 4th chapter, which was on Colleen's poetic voice. And if there's anything that is unique and stands out beautifully, it's her voice in the poems. It's a voice you want to be with. You know, as you read them, you think, oh, I'm not quite getting where this is going, but I love the voice. Okay. And afterwards followed these. She was also anthologized in many anthologies. My working title for the thesis was at the first Lucid Confusion. Was it mine? Was it hers? Would any of you today who are here who've read some Colleen might have felt a little confusion? Anybody? A little? Wacky, somebody said? Well, though I ultimately changed the title, Lucid Confusion does fit. Confusion, bringing together with light. You know? So let's start with that image. It points to the illuminating power of Colleen's often surprising associations and illusions, the affinities she finds. And it points to the momentarily disorienting way her poems often move without falling apart. To switch metaphors, she weaves many seemingly disparate elements into a delicate and durable tapestry, or a lacy web of relationships, people, places, times, fellow creatures, objects, all come together, sometimes with a startle. In doing so, they give a reader's perception of mental whiplash. But her work bears out what fiction writer and poet John Steffler says. Poetry is a way of perceiving and interacting with the world. It takes a readiness for intensity and acuity and surprise for both poet and reader. So when a Colleen poem threatens mental whiplash, I'd say hang on for the ride. Her poems break the boundaries between self and other, fact and imagination, waking life and dream, the domestic and the wild, or the mystical, matter and spirit, present and past, time and eternity, even life and death. Those boundaries are broken. They reveal a rich, connected world made of the spirit and matter of metaphor, which is about itself. Metaphor is all about connections or affiliations between one thing or another with a ground they share. Okay. Metaphor sheds light on the web of relationships that make up our day-to-day world. And boy, do we need that in a fragmented world that we're living in today. As prize-winning author Terry Griggs writes, Colleen's poetry stocks preserves of light. To pursue my claim that her poetry breaks boundaries in a way that is both lucid and a bit confusing, let's take a look at 2 of her 10 letters. Ola Noazad will come up and read letter 1.
Letter 1. Nobody knows where I'm buried, and nobody knows whether our experience levers really human experience. So fall back on somebody else with a heart sweet and easily readable. Someone in a picture, for instance, wearing turn-of-the-century Liberty lawn fading to lavender. Hair pinned in a quick bun, she is always on that balcony, overlooking the harbor. It is always morning, and she is always saying goodbye, very tenderly and slowly, to someone who is up early and tending a sail toward daybreak. Is this what I mean by experience levering? Should I run up a little superstructure of sorts? But then Ariadne was plumper, wasn't she? Penelope Martha-ing away on her shuttle? Mrs. Polly famous, too bent on her kettle of plantain eye plasters and little leech garden. Dido too weepy in her leopard skin? Some of these days they'll be handing out sheet metal handkerchiefs. That's not the ending, though. I want her on my tombstone, waving at the waves.
Thank you, Ola. Right away, there's that bit of confusion. Our speaker speaks from beyond the grave, as she will do again in letter 10 at the end of that little series, where she says, "No one knows where I'm buried, but it's a happy part of ground." As she describes the surrounding era of that picture, she has another elastic. Oh, that's back in number 10. When she thinks back that way, she exclaims, "All I can think of is why it's happening again." An elastic moment. She makes them happen. So the opening of letter 1 is the first startle for us as readers. Then the concern for connection and meaning. Where am I? Oh, does the story of a single life actually say anything about another person's life, about human experience in general? Can the singular lever or raise to the light our shared reality? Can it chime? There's no place here for a bell. Can it chime with our experiences and ring a bell of connecting insight? To explore that question, the speaker of the poem turns to a picture of a woman caught for all time in a single, meaningful, and revealing moment. The poem takes us to that woman's era, the late 1980s, her place, the balcony, her gesture of always waving goodbye tenderly to someone who is always sailing into the sunrise. And how tenderly you said that line, Ola. Beautiful. A lasting moment that has rung a bell with the speaker of the poem, living more than half a century later. In that image, she finds a reality she recognizes and feels at home with. The fixed position, the patient waiting, the tender goodbye. Then there's a shift in tone into the living present. Is this what I mean by experience levering? Should I run up a superstructure of sorts? A superstructure is that pattern always already there in our language and culture that might show how art can say something meaningful about really human experience. Colleen is actually having a bit of fun here with James Reaney's own Northrop Frye-influenced use of mythic archetypal figures and patterns to shape his work. Some of you might remember that Stan Dragland discussed this practice in the 2019 Reaney Lecture and elaborated on for the 2022 lecture delivered posthumously by Terry Griggs. Both lectures formed his last book, James Reaney on the Grid. In letter 1, with casual, homey domestic language, Colleen brings down to earth and calls into question the fitness of mythic female figures for that task of levering our individual human experience. There's Ariadne in her labyrinth having eaten a bit too much. Homer's Penelope domestically Martha-ing away as she weaves and unravels her father-in-law Laertes' shroud. a newly minted herbalist wife for the one-eyed monster Polyphemus blinded by Homer's Odysseus, and Virgil's Dido lamenting Aeneas's desertion, not histrionically and catastrophically as Virgil recounts it, but just by being plain weepy. Dido, weepy. Ironically, Colleen's playful diction and tone bring those mythical and legendary women into a more recognizable world, while suggesting, nevertheless, that they don't quite lever her own felt experience. Then there's another shift to a critique of the present day. Some of these days, they'll be handing out sheet metal handkerchiefs. Where the heck did that come from? So what we've got here is a contrast with one of those mental whiplashes that I mentioned. No soothing in that out-of-the-blue critique of present-day mechanized modernity. The cold hardness of the modern world is perhaps what draws the speaker of the poem to the picture in tone and topic. She returns to it and finds that picture of the woman levering for her own experience. That's not the end, though, she says, and speaking from some hope-filled space beyond death and time, that's who she wants on her tombstone. Boundary-breaking, lucid confusion is both addressed and enacted by letter 2, which Patricia Black will read.
Letter 2. Really, first letter to second seeing of great light, and knowledge that first light deserves telling of. So, light number 1, letter 2, time, perhaps, no scene, horizontals, then so many windows opening suddenly, horizontals, verticals, quite put by, and I'll be living in a palace made of light. Houses have walls to slip not out, paper shades, partitions, hard to describe except undecorating, but the feeling that I'm going to be awake all day and somebody else will be awake too.
Thank you. That's beautiful, Patricia. So wittily cheerful, the poem, that's okay. The poem starts with prosaic memo language. Oh, there we go. So it starts with prosaic memo language blended with terse but ironic and destabilizing stage directions. The amendment in the opening, really first letter to second seeing of great light, may be paying homage to and making familiar something James Reaney became interested in. That is 19th century psychiatrist Dr. Maurice Bucke's epiphanic experience of being filled with light and a vision of universal harmony and peace. That experience, that was first light. That experience was brought on by his life-changing time with American transcendentalist poet Walt Whitman. The speaker in letter 2 both domesticates that epiphanic experience and at the same time conveys his wonder. The confining grid of horizontals and verticals falls away in the promise of living in a palace made of light. But it's not out of this world esoteric. It's a joyous sense of connection we may all have had. The feeling that I'm going to be awake all day and somebody else will be awake all day too. Solitude, loneliness dispelled. Big C vision of connection discovered on a personal, everyday level. That sense of connectedness comes up overtly in a number of poems, such as, such as The Brown Family. They're a hard-scrabble group living on her father's 40-acre potato farm. But as Colleen puts it, quote, strangely, that same thing we want would satisfy a Brown, something of the sort God gives us every day, something we can take up in our hands and bear away. Then in the poem The Shame, which is a hoot, in which her Scottish great-grandfather dies before saying which tartan is indeed his family's. She writes, "It's nothing to give up and move on, nothing to die. That could happen to the best of us. But to die without finishing the sentence, great-grandfather, that was a waste of breath." So to die, that could happen to the best of us. What could be more connecting than the fact that we're all going to go there? Shared reality, really human experience indeed. And as if in code, this is an enigmatic little piece full of big breath and wide space. She speaks, invokes our shared reality in the line. We all like fires, and we all like waterfalls, and the brown days when gulls chase unseen excitement over the fields. Don't we all just love a fire? Poetic metaphors like the extended one in letter 2 are themselves levering. They wrap around otherwise nameless, hard to pinpoint emotional facts. Metaphors give those facts, those emotions, body, a tactile presence, and lift them into the light. In the poem, "I Have Confused the Feeling," Colleen uses a metaphor for that experience of almost remembering but not succeeding. Sound familiar? It's on the tip of my tongue. You've got to have a partner who's encyclopedia, like my husband. What's the word? You know? So she says time gets confused. The speaker recalls being on a train and passing at some point in some time the same landscape of stretching plains when someone's eyes looked asters into mine. What an image for a look of love that's surprising. Yeah. But she can't remember who or when. Those details hover at the door of consciousness, but never come in. However, even though she knows it does no good to strain, the experience of not remembering is itself deftly caught in metaphors of association. It's unquiet as hair on nib or the poisoned drill. Can you imagine that? Hair on nib, poisoned drill, fine, tense, you know. So note how tactile her metaphors are. They arise out of a sensibility that melds mind and body. Sometimes, as Colleen's poetry shows us, some truths, some experiences can only be known in terms of the metaphors that give them expression. Here's a very short poem that uses another delicate metaphor to make the unnameable and ineffable concrete. Again, the title is the first line of the poem, and the experience is one of surprised, receptive perception. This is about Susan Reaney. Susan, lazily finger-combing her hair so fine, spies that one golden head in the glass, and she laughs, making me feel a handful of butterflies flung on the face. Oh, what a way to capture that unnameable emotion. It makes a bridge between language and that unnameable emotional fact. Listen to the sounds of it. That's why reading her poetry out loud is a great way to access it. Deftly, the plosive b, b, and the sharper t's in butterflies gently hit the soft f's of handful, flies, flung, face. Boom. The reality of butterflies is not obscured, but brought to light here. A great example of the physicality of Colleen's language, its rootedness in the physical world. A world that, as Leonard Cohen wrote, I'm looking at Noelle Tancredi there because she knows my love of Leonard Cohen. As Leonard wrote, magic is alive, magic is afoot. That's in Colleen's world. Other metaphors. I'm thinking of Colleen's poem, The Obvious Skies, in which she says her father never said directly. He never looked directly into the obvious skies. He always went around in circles telling a story. Please forgive the outdated reference to First Nations people in what I'll quote next. She says, near the end of the poem, "My father says his teacher insisted I could draw, and even when we drew the honest Indian and all I could draw was the counter and the blankets." The association. She once, when I went to visit her once, she said to me, sat down, very gracious, and she said, "Would you like a piece of pumpkin pie?" It was in November. She brought me a bowl of pumpkin. The pastry was implied. It's a metaphor. The pumpkin was a metaphor for pumpkin pie. So, yes. But again, that bit of confusion, that mental jolt we get is part of what Leonard says, how the light gets in. We'll now look at a poem whose title suggests similes, but demonstrates metaphor in motion. Old age seen as like and as. It shows the affinity-finding nature of Colleen's mind and art and presents some of her most puzzling associations. When we bear with the lucid confusion this poem induces, we may find those associations quite fun to puzzle out. Ola and Patricia will alternate the 4 stanzas. Is this on, Dan? Thank you.
Those deep type roots tend toward mineral. Some are like Winston Churchill, all emerald, and preserve the legend that a stone can grow. Alchemists say that sun and moon, the same that govern vegetable and man, influence stone, and it seems so.
Now her roots are a nimble tumbleweed, mental and all metal like a Victorian bicycle. Mrs. Carrie Conklin, 97, out in the garden with her hoe, or more simply, washing up, warming up potatoes. That gold circle on her hand once whirled her into a June tree. Now she's the one bird warty as a gourd.
You throw a toad into the air, and it's a brown bat. Down on the ground, it's a quiet, alone. Animal, but anti-circulatory, no glow. Just try and polish me, his ruby eyes will harden. Then he's just the plain worshipping toad in the garden, blinkless, contemplative, and oh God, alive.
Oh my, yes, like making poems, experimenting with gold puff powder, grafting or pruning the unruly vine, just enduring wisely into old age has its mystery, like the mystery of what's keeping up the interest and the illusion of those fine and leaping eyes.
Thank you. It is so nice to have other voices, especially your two. Okay, how do we deal with that? Would anyone like to suggest a relationship among deep type groups that tend towards mineral? Oh, I've done it, done. I want to go back. No, I don't. I want to go forward. I hate technology. Would anyone like to suggest a relationship among deep type roots that tend towards mineral, Winston Churchill, and emeralds? Anyone? See, I want to get together. I want to get together. Okay. Let's recall that the terrain of the whole poem covers a garden. Somebody is out there gardening. And dealing with the ground of all life, something science has pursued for eons. Now with quantum physics, we're getting close to the notion that all material is just light slowed down. Think of all the atoms in us in this room, just going around. Why do we stay together? Why don't we fly up? Okay. And of course, botany and other sciences are proving how very interconnected our world is. Someone south of us once compared China's air to America's air, saying China's air is worse and Americans' air is better. Sorry, I couldn't let that guy go without one comment. Stupid. Okay. The mention of roots in this first stanza fits well with the many poems Colleen writes about relatives and ancestors, with her concern with her own genealogical roots. Then here, alchemy comes in, or ancient natural philosophers who noticed that metals, like silver, were found in veins through rocks, and those veins looked root-like. Then they surmised that stones and metals were therefore organic and therefore could grow. The more spiritually focused alchemists used the metaphor of stones to depict the growth of the human soul and character from base to refined, from material heaviness to the light of eternal wisdom and universal creative love, which is also the basis of many religions whose aim is spiritual transformation. Roots also suggest green, hence the reference to emerald, that maybe to its color. But why are deep roots like Winston Churchill? And why is he all emerald? Well, one of the ancient records of alchemical thought is called the Emerald Tablet. So maybe that's why Winston Churchill is in the same stanza as alchemists. But why is he all emerald? Well, mineral and gems go together as denizens of the ground, and emeralds in ancient cultures signified foresight, strength in adversity, and rebirth. Churchill can certainly be associated with those, and he was seen as trustworthy, solid in wartime, and old emerald. Okay. Because the poet is considering likes and ases, she contrasts Churchill's deep roots with Carrie Conklin's. Her roots are light, stick-like, like the spokes of a bicycle, in motion, whirling with ideas, perhaps all mental, and stubborn at 97, all metal. She's associated with things of the earth, with the garden and potatoes, but memory and imagination whirl again and find her in the June tree as a youthful bride. Just as swiftly, the poem comes back to the here and now, to the plain domestic reality, to the fact of aging. She's an old bird, warty as a gourd, puckered and sun-browned. Oh, we're all heading there. The speed of that transition from bride to gourd enacts the swift passage of time to old age. That warty image has affiliation with the toad, also a brown creature of the ground and the garden. The poem moves about, but the threads are there. The toad gets his own imaginary transformation, just as Carrie does. Thrown in the air, it's a brown bat. On the ground, a stone, no glow, giving us an echo of the first stanza as well, the emerald. The toad then gets a voice. Just try and polish me. That bit of imagination brings the poem back to ordinary magical earth, where the creature is just the plain, worshiping toad in the garden, blinkless, contemplative, and oh God, alive. Life is a gem of great worth here. The step into reflection on the speaker's part in stanza 4 takes off from the mention of the toad's contemplative aspect. Here we go back to the alchemists of the opening stanza. It's all about mystery, how poems come about, how those less metaphorically minded alchemists experimented with gold puff powder, perhaps an allusion to their famous effort to turn stone into gold. How to garden those unruly vines that want to go every which way, the way these poems often do. And then the simple magic of living wisely to old age and not losing the sense of wonder that keeps up the interest to the point of finding mystery in merely looking with delight and imagination at a toad with the illusion of its fine and leaping eyes. In this poem, again, the poet's imagination gives the reader a spin, a whirl. It stretches back in time to the long era of alchemy, over to Carrie as an old woman, back to her time as a bride, up with the June tree and the bat, down again to the garden, the speaker's presence, where in 1955, Churchill was still in the news. It can be a confusing ride, this movement between the esoteric and the domestic, but the reward is wonder, and often a delighted release like laughter. Before we shift from my own metaphor of lucid confusion to Colleen's own more apt, more capacious metaphor of the one big sea, let's borrow her mention in the poem Sunday Morning, quite a haunting poem, of an army roll call that occurs in a dream. She dreams that the officer sees that this one is supporting that one somehow. Robinson answering for Robinson. An image of caring, holding one another up, that's central to Colleen's vision. Ola and Patricia will do a quick roll call in which other characters who may or may not have real-life counterparts. This is just one sample of the 500 or so people she includes in her connecting vision. Roll call.
Anne Bronte,
Al Purdy,
Seagon Girl,
Andre Gide,
Aristide de Bruant,
Abe Burrows,
Anne Sexton,
Boris Pasternak,
Mrs. Trotmouth,
Bronwyn Wallace,
Harry,
Charles Peggy,
Blue and Yellow Boy,
Marilyn,
Francis Jams,
Aroha Cameron,
Frank Scott,
Garcia Lorca,
Old Ed,
Harold Town,
Henri Matisse,
Peter and Eugene,
Jack Chambers,
James Ashworth Weaver,
Jean Mackay,
Malcolm,
The Gorsts,
Margaret Atwood,
Margaret Abbison,
Mrs. Neville,
Margaret Lawrence,
Marion Engel,
Marion Moore and her mother,
Mike Todd,
Milton Acorn,
Morley Callahan,
Tom and Ted Brown,
Pablo Neruda,
Paul Verlaine,
Nellie Brown,
Philip Larkin,
Rita Hayworth,
Sylvia Plath,
Tony Urquhart.
William Faulkner.
And there are many more to meet when you read through all of her poems. Thank you, Patricia and Ola. Colleen's inclusive vision is discernible throughout her work, with varying degrees of presence, and is overtly named in the last poem we'll look at today, Four Corners, Kings Park, Manitoba. The vision is spoken by my dolphin baby, who said to me, "We're all a swim in one big sea." We'll work our way toward that vision, and I'll leave it to you to ponder the association between dolphins and babies. They smile simply. To set up an academic superstructure of sorts for my thesis, I arranged that messy folder full of poems in a way that was not chronological and not thematic, but I arranged it in terms of how imaginatively expansive each poem was, how much empathetic, non-judgment heart they express, how much life beyond the self they loop in, and therefore how clear a glimpse we get of the one big sea vision. From that one big sea vision is a short early poem written under the pseudonym M. Morris. You know, gender neutral, maybe they'll print it if they think it's maybe a man. Colleen used that during the 1950s when the Reaney family lived in Winnipeg. It's called, this little poem, Isolation. Here, the otherwise embracing and empathetic imagination is at its most contracted. Its 8 lines express an unfulfilled longing for connection, for inhabiting an emotional world that can span great spaces, from Perugia to Assisi, and the not impossible bound from Paris to Moscow. But it ends with this: "Oh, but Winnipeg to anywhere. Why does my heart cry out as if pained moments of silence were stretching infinitely in the distance? The mind, heart, and imagination find no connecting point, no other to help the speaker solidify her identity. Space is empty, alienating." Another M. Morris poem similar to Isolation is Warning, one that never appeared in her later collections. It introduces a term that expresses Colleen's sense of the constraints that work against connection and inclusion, against the creative imagination. With one-way ticket to Biddydom, she sits unwitting. Heart forgot to say hello to mind today. First Cold War, then apartheid. great images for an inattentive, disintegrated self, lost in its own misery. Memories of a lake holiday fade and become all mental. If heart is closed and memory and imagination are hobbled, if the self is tight, joyless, and constricting, then biddydom reigns. Biddydom's opposite is called in this poem chivalry, which I take to mean inclusiveness, imagination of the other, and open awareness of a world beyond the self. But chivalry ceases unless sentimentally stirred, unless the heart's in it. In that state of chivalry, a warm nudge and the buds joyfully unfold. But in biddydom, the birds fly off crying their crisp omens, and it turns cold. Chivalry ceases unless sentimentally stirred. That is, mind and heart not working in harmony. Okay. Colleen's eye and her eye are usually looking outward. With her distinctive poetic voice, as personal as fingerprints, she delivers to readers a surprising range of human experience, from the comic to the tragic, from the very concrete domestic world to the world of visionary dream. The poems are delivered by a poetic voice that is warm, immediate, and maintains a delicate touch, whatever the subject, from grief to delight and everything in between. Except for the cruel rule-making owner of the power loom factory of Poem for Alperti, her hundreds of people receive no censure. Just read Sea Gone Girl someday to see how gently Colleen embraces this mother who leaves her daughters in the evening to go bar hopping after visiting Marines, with her fishnet gown and nails like Turner sunsets going down. The teenagers wear those now. Applause. At times, I have a teenage granddaughter. What do you do with the nails that are half an inch? Anyway, at times, I'm a biddy. At times, Colleen's voice intones the wise simplicity of a child in diction and syntax. To me, it often sounds like she's giving the people she writes about a deal of fond holding. We'll come back in a moment to that word holding. In the Rose family, remember, I ordered these poems according to how expansive they were. In the Rose family, which is one of three family poems, the Green family and the Brown family, Colleen gives us a tale of three children found by their father out in the pitted yard after their nursing mother and stove are suddenly gone, along with the baby, a fire, we must suppose. The father enfolds the children in his arms. He had made a peephole with a hot coin in what we can infer is a frosted window, so the children could watch him as he left for Mass. The poem speaker wonders, as the CNR train rushes past, if travelers peeping through the frost could comprehend that sight. The family and those travelers are connected only by their dim, frosted sight. Little hole through frost. The only empathetic attention in the poem comes from the poet's gentle treatment of the piteous event. The one big sea here has shrunken to a bit of frost melt, soaring father's embrace, and the poet's voice, giving the Rose family some holding. Here's a poem that demonstrates the speaker aching to get beyond the self to an idea of connectedness. It's called Walk 4. I say its opening lines, as my husband Roy can attest, every blessed morning when I wake up to an overcast sky. Up all birds and absolutely shred the unclove air above this sampler yard, whose edges are acacia, pine, bluebush, and elm hedge. Cry silence at the childish arrangement of jumps that are ever-ending in a sprawl of leotards uplofting, the red and black ones of that centaur age. And just forgive their mother out raking leaves and saying, Martha with her left hand, Mary with her right, pulling hard right into winter with her autumn rage. Oh, send down pure light upon these dear imaginings, till we can see the wanderers by white dahlia walk, Rambo in surcoat, dear Mike Todd, lean on the sundial to talk, when all is all illumined with these wings. Where the heck did Rambo, who died in 1891, come, along with Mike Todd, film director and 1 year husband of Elizabeth Taylor before he died in 1958. She didn't have to divorce him. A bit of mental whiplash there. Let's go slowly, as much strong poetry needs us to do. Birds, a gray laden and leaden sky, a yard with odd growth for, nope, yeah, there it is. Okay. All right, where did we get? A bit of mental whiplash. Okay, so we're going to go slowly with this one. We've got that leaden sky in a garden that's a little odd for southwestern Ontario. Kids doing dance moves and tumbling about. Centaurs evoked. Fallen leaves. A burdened, very bothered mother who feels rage at domestic constraints inside that sampler yard with its clear edges. But it's a rage she knows needs forgiving. The need for forgiveness releases the prayer, the plea, to move from a mood of biddydom to a glimpse of the light-filled big C world of connectedness, to see beyond edges, to bring close to similarly extravagant, bound-breaking artists, Rembo and Mike Todd, who produced 80 years, what is it? Around the World in 80 Days, yes. So a pause on that. Well, I won't go into the fact that acacia doesn't grow here. What we get pseudo-acacia, which is blackthorn. So blackthorn, pine, also prickly, and not much grows under them. The blue bush could probably be, Ola helped me, she's a gardener, blue juniper, so that fits, but that's prickly too. And elm hedge. That would require quite a good deal of yard. However, the yard that somehow spills rakeable quantities of leaves needs cleaning up, and that sends the speaker into a rage. However, a turn happens in the fourth stanza. How does it happen? I think that vision is released after the mention of Mary. Does anyone know the Mary Martha story from the Bible? Right? It used to piss me off when I was a kid. Martha's working away in the kitchen, cleaning up the place, and Jesus is coming for a visit. So Jesus is there. What does Mary do? Not the dishes. Doesn't set the table. She sits at Jesus' knee and listens to his wise words. And then Jesus says, Mary took the better part. Well, gee, you want to eat? I eventually grew up and learned that don't fuss with the small stuff. Listen to the wise words first. Anyway, this Mary Martha pattern is first noticed by Jean and Don Mackay in Colleen's poetry. So it starts with Martha. Martha as the homebody, the shaping, gathering in energy. Mary as the adventurer who breaks boundaries and expands the world. We've already seen this association in letter 1 with Penelope Martha-ing away on her shuttle, being domestic, weaving warp and woof together, organizing. And we saw some Martha-ing in the old age seen as like and as to pruning the unruly vine. Okay. In walk 4, the speaker is in Martha mode, but not at ease with it. She quite testily does some domestic things, watching the kids, raking the leaves, cleaning up the yard. The children are doing the Mary thing, being noisy, wild, turning themselves in the day upside down. The mother is caught in the tension. Left hand is Martha-ing, right hand is being Mary. Let's do some more language listening here. Note the difference in sound among Martha, with a soft TH, the okay, and Mary, which it pushes off with that R, that hard R, and that E in the Y, Mary, and then the repeated word right. Both names are spondies, that is, accented on the first of 2 syllables. but very different in sound. That repeated word right cuts. It's sharp. It seems to slice into the speaker's mood and in a way spend the anger. It releases that passionate plea for light and a vision of boundaries transcended. Everything is transformed. The tight, confining sampler yard becomes dear embroiderings. On the lip of winter, time falls back to the blooming season of White Dahlia Walk. The mention and coupling of Rimbaud and Mike Todd break the bonds of time, death, and distance. The birds the mother testily orders up in the first line are addressed now with a heartfelt request. The desire to yell at the kids to shut up dissipates. All transmutes into a sunny vision of those two artists leaning companionably on the sundial in casual, relaxed conversation. The birds who were required to cleave the air are now asked more gently to send down pure light, to open up the seeing heart and the inclusive imagination that envisages a world where all is all illumined with their wings. The rhyme scheme itself in Walk 4 evens out in the final stanza. In stanza 1, Leotard has to jump 2 lines to find its rhyme in yard in the second stanza, as does Age to find at the end of stanza 2, rage. But in the last stanza, the first and fourth lines rhyme, and the rhyming couplet in the middle 2 lines. From a bit of scatter to a neater order, Mary Martha'd into harmony and revelation. Light and inclusion are here, however, in wish form, for the speaker at this point on the way to the one big C. The tension in the Mary Martha dynamic does not always lead to a sense of transcendence as it does in Walk 4. This iron from the ironing woman stuck in Martha mode, homesick and swimming in Big Tear River, but not one big C. She's in a wind-bound farmhouse where the irons wait and get snapped up in their handles and slapped at those shirts, viciously reddening, collar, inside, men, men, men. Big C far away here. Rivers run into seas, though. Another poem with the Martha Mary pattern is an old romance, mostly tongue-in-cheek, but an accomplished rendering of the frustration of a solely domestic world. Here, Martha-ing is penetrated by the wildness of Mary. My neighbor bakes Medea cakes. Her hair is raisin wild. Her eyes would terrify a child. She screams while she bakes and cooks up some old bones for stock. The poem speaker calls on the grid of myth here. Are those neighbors' children getting cooked up just as the deserted Medea did to some of the dozen children she bore to Jason of the Golden Fleece? In this poem, a bit of myth does lever the speaker's own chafing as she washes the dishes and wonders, James and Susan, it didn't happen, right? Whether I might too drown a daughter and go down a wanderer from an old romance. These two women are pretty far from the one big C, but there's the weest glimpse of connection. At least they're in the same boat. Mary and Martha are in sync in a 10-line boundary-breaking poem, one of a number simply called Poem. It begins with a feeling of nightfall, having been alone all day. Then at 5 p.m., that witching hour, the speaker escapes. As she leaves, she blesses, in Martha mode, what holds in their course all the dear domestic bits. Papers, tomatoes, Morley Callahan, the pictures of little clay chicken, flower vendor, the static red-legged horse. In the second stanza, Mary's wildness takes over. Something tugs and bunts the speaker against people and storefronts. She wishes she could mash into piles of oranges, pink tellies, the crowd, combating color with a deep but china cheap, a by come by, a red-legged horse. As chicken, flower vendor, and that static horse all come to life. All those domestic Martha things go full bore Mary. She concludes that to leap with such inaudible clamor is always glamorous and proud. That is, to escape biddydom with a free heart, mind, and imagination is a kind of art of living. The Mary-Martha dynamic as a feature of Colleen's writing lets a poem loop out far beyond the self, then get gathered into its own significant shape. One little poem called The Girls shows how the pairing of these two energies is simultaneously a tension and an inclusive symbiosis of difference. Patricia and Ola will each take on one of those energies.
Didn't you hear the birds, she said? They were in their element.
Sorry.
See, Ola, Martha and Mary fighting it over.
I never get the good part.
Want me to start? Okay, sorry. Didn't you hear the birds, she said? They were in their element yesterday.
I was in mine, said Janet. I cleaned. I did the whole house, top to bottom. I did all the floors, from the front room right up to the third floor. I was ready to drop, but they were that bright.
Outside the yellow window square, birds were rioting. Gertrude's voice from the kitchen slid up those long, curved banisters that had been shined with nugget black. Her voice had that dark pitch, turned at last into a blackbird, and went roughed in the berry bushes, singing a smooth song like jelly.
Janet's was like a sparrow's dipped in honey.
Again, thank you. Note the physical texture of Colleen's metaphors. I believe by now you can tell which of the girls is Martha and which is Mary. The sudden metaphorical transformation of Gertrude's voice into a blackbird is enabled by Janet's endeavors, polishing the banisters with nugget black polish. Both girls' voices are bird-like. The world of either or is transcended and becomes both and. That bit of border-breaking wildness that reveals the big sea of interconnection is contained and rises out of the domestic world. To segue from a bit of fun, a painful way, oh my God, to the big C is found in letter 3, where the idea of levering really human experience returns. Ola will read it.
Numbers. The numbers of tiny rings in labeled sacks and the packets of very worn shoes on the plain wood shelves in plain number shacks, and the numbers blotting out the scratched names over bunks. The simplicity so great that it almost looks like lack of imagination. Of the numbers of headstones there must, despite Mexico, be the numbers of very small feet that are marching forever over the seas of China. All these might tend to set us against numbers. But then there are people like Marion Moore's mother who say, look at the stars, leaves on the aspen, grasses and grasses, fields of grass. Look into the undepthed smiles of the levering dead.
Thank you, Ola. That was beautiful. From World War II atrocities of Nazi concentration camps, where the clothing and possessions of the millions of murdered victims were kept meticulously organized, to the exiles who suffered China's Cultural Revolution and all the dead in between. So much death, the counting makes multiplicity horrific. Colleen lived through those times and was alive to them. We find in her poems quite a number of such references and allusions to life in wartime. In letter 3, beside all that evil, pain, and death, there's the wonderful, uncountable stars, leaves, grasses. Is this shift in attention a callous, buffering, turning away? Or is it just recognition of the huge paradox we inhabit? The one big sea holds us all, with all the joy and agony of our human history. All the piteous dead and the undepthed, enigmatic smiles that once might have graced the faces of those people are part of us nevertheless. Their lives, their suffering, their deaths lever our lives, are part of the meaning of our human experience. Death is treated with respectful and believing gentleness in Colleen's poem. That big sea of inclusiveness is broad and deep. In letter 6, in 10 letters, the speaker compares all the things my mother told me to Eskimo carvings in 2 lines facing. One carving brandishes a heart like a spear. The supplicant one holds in a heart that looks out of wondering eyes. There's that Mary Martha pattern again. Both are to be treasured. Colleen compares the 2 contrasted carvings to days that must be taken up in the hand, just fondled, dandled, handled, day after day after day, kept safe, cherished, remembered. Then the poem takes a turn and questions itself. But the psalm, could we ever live days enough to give it enough holding? Even when sitting alone in darkness, quietly waiting out the winter? Not alone. There's that trinity, time, patience, eternity, many bells gently ringing. Goethe says, life is for the living. But what is living? Ah, that upright one, fists to the sky. This time it's First World War, just 7 years over before Colleen's birth. The 5-month Battle of the Somme in France saw the death and maiming of over 1 million soldiers. It was one of the deadliest battles in human history. On its first day, the death toll of over 17,000 British and Commonwealth soldiers was the greatest loss ever in British military history. For Colleen, pain and loss cry for empathetic, wide-hearted holding, for not ignoring, not forgetting, but keeping close with the help of a belief that nothing, no one is ever really gone for us. To quote this elastic moment again, we are everything who feel it. Everything that has meaning is occupied with us, and we with it, connected in the one big sea. But it takes the strength of memory, imagination, trust, faith, to cross the barrier of woeful death and time. The holding is not weak. It's not just the purview of the wondering, gentle, supplicant one. It takes as well the commitment to life figured in that upright one, fists to the sky. Letters 3 and 6 I count as big sea poems of great empathetic expansiveness. They go back in time, move across wide spaces, take in wisdom and suffering, a wise mother, Inuit sculpture, history, and literature. Most importantly, it takes a lot of heart and imagination to hold together colossal death and that trinity of time, patience, eternity. Colleen's poems give a lot of holding to multiple relatives, neighbors, friends, parts of nature, creatures, and beloved objects, all swimmers in the big sea. From her earliest poems to her latest, her vision and voice are consistent, as is her sense that what seems gone is not really lost, provided we loop them into our elastic moments, imagine them deeply, hold them in memory. Take, for example, her stern, taciturn Scottish grandmother, entrenched in Martha mode, in the funny, tender poem, My Grandmother's Sugar Shell, Ontario Baroque. This poem recreates an instance with the speaker's grandmother. My grandmother's sugar shell spoon, Ontario Baroque, has just fallen out of the unclean silver bag. What does it mean, I wonder? One day only I saw her stop work. We lay out on the grass by the highway under the big maple. So the spoon fell, so what? A plain prose person might say, so polish it. But when they heard a car arrive full of visitors, grandmother rose all of a piece. She rose up somehow straight and not hinging her knees, nor using her hands, nor her elbows, nor leaning her head forward, so that she was the reverse of a tree falling before a quick gust. That is, she rose on a slant, as if pulleys were attached to her everywhere, or as if the kitchen wood stove were a magnet that suddenly drew her inside. What an image. A perfect image for a straight-laced, unbending, no-nonsense, prosaic person who is nevertheless likened to, put into relationship with, a tree. Reflecting on that incident, the poem speaker says, grandmother would never wonder about anything. Just say, that spoon needs cleaning. That pragmatic, task-driven woman who lives without wonder is nevertheless cherished in this poem. That reference to never wondering picks up the speaker's earlier comment, I wonder, what does it mean? The echo connects the two characters in that last line about wondering. And yet, she concludes, I think it means she needs remembering. Spoon needs cleaning, grandmother needs attention too, needs holding in connection and in memory, needs inclusion in Colleen's One Big C. The imaginative holding defies death. In a poem for my professor, first published in 1949, Colleen writes to and about Reid McCallum, her professor of philosophy at U of T. These are only parts of it. There is no way to tell how you took us all, heart and owl, under your wing. The falling and fluttering birds in the dim wood were not those hovers and whirs in the aswarm air. Those were angels whose brown wicker is heard like dried keys over the asphalt. Back to those angels from the beginning. I never knew in that isolated day you who were a honey would soon be as out and as under as that groundhog deep in clover. Nor had I ever realized the intense composure of brown, had only seen the roses dry up with wrestling a brown wind, and was puzzled how they fitted you away so nicely. It was your cell, the brown heart seed, and it became you well. Everything is there in the warm cell. The warm cell, as Professor Richard Stingel pointed out, is at once the monastic cell where Professor Reid used to go to meditate, and the cell of his grave, where everything is and where life continues for us. In her article, Plural Poems in Brick 5, Terry Griggs calls Colleen's poems not just plural, and I quote, they are believing poems. They speak of, Terry writes, not just interconnection, but of how close and how reliable, for some unfathomable God-styled reason, the spiritual network really is. Let's look and listen at a poem that takes us back to Colleen Thibaudeau's Acadian ancestors. It's magical, poignant, mysterious. If Colleen is the speaker, she is actually a many generations removed granddaughter of these Evangelines from Acadia. Patricia will read it.
My granddaughters are combing out their long hair, sitting at night on the rocks in Venezuela. They have watched their babes falling like white birds from the last of the treetop cradles. They have buried them in their hearts, where they will never forget, to keep on singing them the old songs. Brought down to earth, they used twigs, flint scrapers, Acadian. Their laughter underground makes the thyme flower in darkness. My granddaughters are thin as fish bones and horn-footed, but they are always beautiful under the stars. Like little Asian paper things, they seem to open outward into their own water bowl. Mornings they waken to lights chink ricocheting off an old black's harbor sardine can. Reduce them, the last Evangelines make them part of the stars. My granddaughters are coming out at night, combing their burr-colored hair by the rocks and stream trickle in Venezuela. They are burnt out as falling stars, but they laugh and keep on singing them the old songs.
Thank you, Patricia. It's magical. I don't want to perpetrate the travesty of a plain prose paraphrase of this lullaby. It's an elegy, indirect history lesson, dream, lament, and celebration. The evocative sensuousness, delicacy, and tenderness of Colleen's poetic voice is found in its fullness in this magical, sad, hopeful poem. Hear and see again the tactile nature of her images. Those tactile twigs, thin, fish bones, horn-footed, burr-colored, burnt out. What an image. They're fading away. They're worn. They're, down to bone. Some of the maritime French, the Acadians, exiled south by the British in 1755, may well have wound up in Venezuela. They certainly landed as far south as New Orleans and the Caribbean. But I'd say there's more music and exotic magic in the sound and distance for us of Venezuela, the music. Here we find the results of cruelty, the weight of loss and death, yet amidst the great pathos, some regeneration, all in those bone-thin granddaughters who, like little Asian paper things, open outward into their own water bowl, waking to a very maritime sardine can from the fishing town of Black's Harbor, New Brunswick, on the Fundy shore. They may be exiled, far away in place and time, but the speaker asks for their transformation, a kind of apotheosis. Reduce them, the last Evangelines, make them part of the stars. They may be burnt out by long centuries, but they laugh, and that laughter brings life, time flowering in darkness. They sing the old songs for their fallen babes, and I think the poem says, keep on singing the old songs for the granddaughters, meaning to us, keep as an imperative, keep on remembering and holding our ancestors, all who are gone from us but not. Such cherishing is also part of making our world one big, connected sea. A poem that is overt about Colleen's vision of and commitment to the big sea of inclusiveness is another one simply called Poem, and starts, I do not want only. I like the title, just poem. It isn't lazy, it isn't nameless. It actually suggests what a poem of Colleen's can be, full of people, things, images, an invitation and act of inclusion. In this poem, a photographer speaks while arranging a photo of the shy child with a shock of slippery wheat-like hair, standing alone after her first communion. Alone after communion, oxymoronic. Alone doesn't connect. So in come a host of others, the baby, the big sister, the young socialist, the dead mother, the man who sits on the steps of the Mayfair washing machine company this morning and every morning, wearing a dirty hockey sweater and holding his head in his hands. In the last stanza here, Colleen's inclusive vision is spoken directly. And I too, after adjusting the focus, I shall go just as natural among them all. Why must the lover and sufferer be out? I do not want the shy child only, aloof for the 1 minute of her life. I want it to be like a Lacey Bruegel. What the heck? Well, here's children's games. It is Lacey. It is. Bruegel can do some pretty wild things and gruesome things, but you can lace. And in any poem that you read, you want to be able to lace among the words, and discover it. Okay. The poem that gives its name to this little 1984 brick book, the Martha Landscapes, which I showed you earlier, combines the weft of the Martha Mary pattern and the warp of the Big C vision that holds so much of Colleen's work together. It is 3.5 pages long, a strange dream in which the speaker, her brother, her children, Martha and Martha's children, get backed in a cave by a bear. Martha and the children escape. The speaker and the brother wind up living in the cave in a scramble of different times, past, present, future. They imagine Martha's solitary odyssey through Georgian Bay, maybe off to the Red River, on a friendly ice floe to Baffin Island, and off to China, where she worked her way back as a nursemaid for some people going home. Embarking from Cape Town, arriving in Southampton, England, somewhat troubled by memories of her past life in big country houses, where she was lonely with everyone off to war. We're told Martha lived quietly in the promised cottage for life, but emigrates to Halifax in old age and crossed the prairies with war brides, where she had a very strange feeling that she was going home. The poem ends with the speaker and her brother back in the cave. Their bones are wrapped in the yarn from her original Ariadne-style search for an escape. But she says, we don't care. We play at being born. She claims she is comfortable, more so in the springtime. They hear mother's voice counseling patience, and let the fog lick us all over now that we are born. Strange for sure as dreams can be, but no nightmare. There's little fear. It's a poem full of trust. Martha has ventured far in Mary mode, pretty much all the way around the world, and made it home, to quote another walk poem, with a whole heart. Time is given a whirl and returns to the womb. The movement of the poem is Mary-like, border-breaking, but makes its way home where Martha is in her element. The Big C has contained space and time, the wildly adventurous, and the domestic. Let's close now by going to the source of Colleen's One Big C reference. It comes from a 4-part poem, Kings Park, Manitoba. Yes, we've snapped our elastic moment back to Winnipeg. Each part of Kings Park covers one of the 4 directions, an inclusive move. North is a mournful instance of biddydom. Look, Mrs. Roker's raking up time in a grim poke by her poker-face house on land where the big, tan, scurfy buffalo are gone, gone, gone. She's a Martha. The second in this 4-part series goes west. It's a plaintive one, where a wheezing, bent-over, bent-under old man watches Charlie Jack digging in the gumbo. Watching, the speaker finds disheartened affinity with the plants being uprooted and the garbage in the yard. She says, and it's my own lot too, bopped by a bottle, dumb and left lying out there in Pereira's yard. That's pretty far from the One Big C. Sad and discarded, but there is a bit of affinity. It's my lot too, she says. The third part goes south to a riot of imagination. It embraces lovingly the Martha world of home and the boundary-breaking energy of the far-raging Mary. Here in the rollicking Ukrainian wedding of the canned vegetables, the vegetables take the opportunity to celebrate when their people, the Kanchuks, leave the house for some country wedding. While they're away, the vegetables whoop it up at the wedding of a radiant gem jar of mushrooms and a jar of pickled onion. All night long, they dance and kiss. Quite abandoned tomatoes dance, head thrown back, madly about the room collide. A roue Uncle Pickle runs amok and wrests the shoes right off the bride. This may sound a little Disney-like, but Colleen keeps the vegetable nature in view at all times. She says, oh, concentrated small are happy, happy acres there, full amplified in every jar, oh, golden sum of gardens. The fourth in this series of 4 corners is East, Time's End's Grove, where we find the speaker outside on a still, hot day with her baby. In the green oak grove at Time's Ends is blowing a pink rose special to that shade. peculiar, wild and soft, not lasting. It has affinity with what my dolphin baby says to me. We're all aswim in one big sea. The poem shows how the affinity between the rose and what the baby says is created, and how that summer moment enters the speaker's mind and memory. She recalls lying on the green grass beside the hedge and under the scrub oak trees, watching children coming through the dust knee-high, as the bees were about and were zooming after those yellow warblers that go lacing through the hedge. The kids snitch a whole banner of roses, run off with them, and then suddenly they loosened up, Colleen writes, and began wildly swinging roses. What an image. Why don't we just get up and wildly swing roses? Okay. And then suddenly they loosened up and swung. What an image. A hot, dusty day whirled out of its drowsiness by the surprise of those children, and by this second surprise, a reprise of the first stanza. Then only the midday left very hot, and I was listening to the wash-wash voice of my baby, who was asleep and who suddenly said, "We're all aswim in one big sea." Oh, joy, the lightest tap can stir a failing sun, can give the laboring globe a spin that starts a staggering, miraculous run of roses, trees, and we who do all swim in one big sea. Now I think we should end our little zoom through the lacy interstices of one small piece of Colleen's wide fabric of poems. And join. We've gone with we've pulled in Mrs. Roker, the Gone, Gone, Gone buffaloes, the muddy people in Pereira's yard, the dancing vegetables, the rose, the baby, the kids, the bees, the yellow warblers, the mother, and us, the readers. So why don't we end with us all reading from Oh Joy. 1, 2, 3.
Oh joy, the lightest tap can stir a failing sun, can give the laboring globe a spin that starts a staggering, miraculous run of roses, trees, and we who do all swim in one big sea.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Dan and to Josh. Thank you to Ola. Thank you to Ola and Patricia, who actually have voices.
Well, thank you, everyone. We've had a crew. I keep wanting to say great big sea.
I know.
But I want to thank at the back, Dan, Josh, and Alana who's come up to the front. Now, Alana, there's some beautiful books of my mother's there. Are those available for checkout, some of them?
Unfortunately not. They're all part of our reference collection, but you are welcome to come back into the library and read them if you'd like.
Well, please do that. That's true. That's true. Well, this was fabulous. That was, join me again in just acknowledging this. Hillary, Patricia, Ola, and of course Peggy. I always find these lectures, I learn so much about my parents, and I think, Susan, you'd agree that we think we know some of these words, some of them, but I've heard new things, and it's emotional. It's very emotional for me, but thank you for lifting us all up with this incredible levering. Levering, that's levering. That's it, for levering us. It's true, for levering us with this and with thank you all, fabulous. Now, there will be questions, if you like, but I will start off with one. I've asked one question already to Alana, and I have another one, just because I heard the name of all the names, and they're great people, Leonard Cohen. For a CD copy of Salwesto Voices, which is a wonderful, I think there are some people here who are on, John Tyndall's on Salwesto Voices, I think it's here, and certainly my parents are on it, and some Roy McDonald. It's just a wonderful collection. And it started a poem from that, my mom's poem, The Blue of the Swimming Pool, was thanks to Words and Josh, was the first incarnation of Colleening 2025 on December 28th, 2024, which would have been Mom's 99th birthday. So it's got some meaning. But I heard the name Leonard Cohen, and this is a participation interactive question. All right. What year did Leonard, well, at least the one we know, what year did Leonard Cohen visit 276 Huron Street? Just call out the answer. The first one correct one gets the prize. 1965. Going. Any others? 1967.
Why didn't he call me is my question.
Well, I'll tell a story about that, but why not? That explains that. Count it back just a little bit.
1962.
1962, very good, but
64?
1965 we had guessed already. Close.
63?
63. Who said 64? Hillary. Yes, it was 1964, and this was, if you can imagine the world of Canadian poetry and the arts, Jack McClellan had this idea that Phyllis Gottlieb, who my mom had known as a student, was a great friend at U of T in the 40s, as Phyllis Bloom, Earl Burney, Leonard Cohen, and Irving Layton were like, well, it's like the Beatles. It was the Fab Four touring the country to huge crowds on campuses. And Irving Layton was somewhere in the community. He had a friend or friends he was visiting, but the other three were at my parents' place. And my mom found out about this because she met the dad in the field behind the house. He was steaming off to Western, I think, and she was out doing something. And Earl and Leonard and Phyllis are coming. Can you get something? So Mom thought about what was in the house, and she went nearby because she thought Leonard Cohen would like deli food. So she got deli food because I think there was a delicatessen. Was it? A butcher. Anywhere in the neighborhood. So she got this, and then it was a fabulous evening, and I think there was a film crew there because I think there was a film being made about Leonard Cohen. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah. So I think, and there's my grandfather who was a very reclusive person. My dad's dad was off. He one side. He was thrilled because I think he kind of thought the film was about him. And it was, finally there was some honor. But anyway, so that all went about. Many years later, I had a chance to write about this because the Free Press took some fabulous pictures of the event up at Western. And I talked to my mom about it. She remembered these things. What she did remember is that she thinks Leonard Cohen had a tippy tummy. So he spent a lot of time upstairs, ostensibly in the washroom. And what my mom's question, this would be in the 2000s when I was writing about it, do you think he was on drugs? Do you think he was taking... And we said we honestly couldn't tell. But yes, Hillary Celeste Voices is yours. And now we'll take questions of, for anyone in participating in the program. Can I start with one? Yeah. Peggy, can you, there was a fortuitous moment because I think you were headed off to do something else rather than write Colleen's Big C vision. Am I right? Did you have a choice of MA? Yeah.
I was going to go to Sherbrooke and do, I was going to do a double French-English master's on Jacques Godbout and Leonard Cohen. And Stan said, why haul the kids that far? Here's a thesis for you.
Yeah. And that was really how the thesis came to be, and this afternoon came to be part of Colleening 2025. That was fantastic. Another question, any other?
I want to know is how long I have known you and never knew you planned to write your thesis on my hero, Leonard Cohen, whom at that time I was in Montreal, sitting in Le Bistrot. Suzanne, please find me. I am almost 30, right over my shoulder, in pencil. Oh my God. How come I never knew that before?
Well, we got to have another lunch and talk about
Obviously.
Yeah, I know.
Talk about him. Oh, you want the question too?
Any other questions?
I'm kind of remembering
Yeah.
it's a fridge magnet sentiment, but something like, although I must have Martha's hands, I have a merry mind, right? So, but I noticed in that poem a reference to Rimbaud in the Surcoat, and a neighbor passed away not too long ago, passed on some books to us. I was looking through the Rambo one recently, and he was a farm boy. He was from the countryside, right? So him in a surcoat, maybe that's him wearing the clomping boots and doing the gardening. So
He was a wild poet. He was a, avant-garde, and she has a lovely poem, Aristide Bruant,
Yes.
called Honeydew, when she asks Aristide Bruant to come in and cause chaos.
I was surprised to learn Rambo was an expert Latinist as well.
Oh, I didn't
He's
know that.
Really a good scholar.
Wow.
Make sure when you speak, anybody who's speaking in this microphone or anybody can't hear you at home. So if you speak,
Oh, it's so. Question from the front. Fantastic.
Okay, before I ask the question, I just want to say that I have a visitor from Ukraine here. She's a poet too, and when she saw the book Lozenges, she asked about the title, and I explained what it was, and she said, "What a perfect title for poetry, to go down your throat, soothing and surprise to your body and enter your body." But I just wondered if there's a story to that title, that Lozenges title, because it seems like a very beautiful metaphor for poems.
Well, fantastic. And would you ask, is it your cousin? Slava Ukraini? Solidarity. Well, Susan, could I ask? I'll ask my sister just in case and this is a mystery to us as well. Like occasional things, there is no answer as far as we know. Unless small, because the poems are very small, and somewhere, it's. I think is it on the? We'll try that. It's on the ColleenThibaudeau.com website that you keep. I think is that the one with Hillary and Mike reading some poems just after they finished the printing down in Sparta. So there's some of that, but it may be the smallness, and it's like a little container. The book is like a little container that you'd get a box of small medicines or something.
Lozenges is quite delightful if you have a chance to look at it. There's poems in the shape of a hockey stick, but my
Shoot scores!
She shoots scores. And there's the one at the end is the balloon.
Oh.
And it is so Colleen because it's a circle, and then the words come down, and the balloon talks about how it sways, and it says, "Please hold on to me." And it's such a holding image, and it's a Mary Martha image,
Yeah.
right? The balloon can go off, and Martha can hold it down. And that was something else I was going to say, and it's gone.
Oh,
Am I right in thinking a lozenge is a
Yeah.
diamond shape?
I think here, and I can just fill in quickly on balloon. I think we have some ballooning news. I think because it's Mum's greatest hit. It's been in anthologies around the world. Yeah, and I think a place in the United States, I think Arizona, is interested in it again. So ballooning is levering itself on.
So how did Mike Todd end up selling into these poems? Was he a big movie fan or what?
Yes, he's a very extravagant personality.
Yeah.
And so Rambo and Mike Todd are very Maryish. Right?
Yeah.
Mike Todd. Oh, Mike. Oh, you didn't hear me, anybody?
Yeah.
Oh, pardon?
For the Zoom.
Oh, for the Zoom call. Oh, technology, Catherine, yes. Hi, people out there in the ether. I think. Yeah. How did Mike Todd, was the question, get into this poem? We never know what's in Colleen's mind, but he too was a very extravagant artist like Rambo, and he broke boundaries with 80, what is it again? Round the World in 80 days was quite a production, apparently. The other thing I wanted to say that it was right, like their hair on nib, is that Colleen was originally, because of lozenges, treated in literature as a children's poet. So it was quite delightful. She has a children's voice, and I don't know what kids would make of some of these poems, but it's worth trying. Their minds can go anywhere.
Oh, at the back here? And I would just add with regard to, I thought one of the clues we hit on was around the world in 80 days, because that's the kind of thing that would appeal, because a lot of these poems go around the world in 80 words, 80 seconds, or whatever. I mean, they're global in that sense. I think there was a question.
Yeah, sort of a question, a direct question. I wonder if Colleen knew Dylan Thomas and Yeats. One of Thomas's great poems, Fern Hill, and time held me green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea.
Wow.
And in the sea. And Yeats, perhaps his greatest poem, finishes that way too. The sea, the mother, the source of all life. The last line of that long poem, Byzantium, that dolphin torn, that gong tormented sea. And it's the end of the process of mystic recreation, the sea.
Yeah, well, with these questions, I always bow to my sister and ColleenThibaudeau.com, and for that matter, JamesReaney.com, but it sounds, I think yours the only thesis on Colleen Thibaudeau's poem, as far as we know. So if you're a younger person looking for, I mean, there's some questions we have not answered yet and can't at this moment. Oh, and terrific, yeah.
I had a question about the Martha and Mary poem. When you were speaking about the acacia, the blue bush, and the elm hedge, you had hinted at sort of a literal interpretation of those, an equivalent in southwestern Ontario landscaping, with the acacia being the blackthorn, the blue bush being the juniper, and then the elm being the elm before Dutch elm disease. But I'm wondering if there's a poetics of landscape there, because that is something that is very old. When I saw that on the slide, the immediate thing I thought of is Virgil's Eclogues, and specifically the fourth eclogue, where he's talking about lowly tamarask. And acacia is a very, very biblically charged image, as is blue bush, and I believe blue bush maybe shows up in Shakespeare. And then I'm thinking like elm as well has poetic connotations, and I'm wondering if she's doing something with that, speaking about a poetic landscape that she is inhabiting while inhabiting her actual garden.
The mic is. I should just mention, and he was just there as Keith Ryan. One of the beautiful things about Colleening 2025 that came out of the previous lectures was your reading of Wild Turkeys, Mom's fantastic short story. Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that there's lots more to write about Colleen. You could write about, as Roy said the other day, you could write all about her references and meditations on war. Landscape, I once thought I would love to do a geography of her poems. So that would take in landscape, but I'm not going to do that. Somebody else is going to do that. One big C, they're there.
Okay. And when you mention war, I was again, the psalm was a very emotional moment, because I think our grandmother Thibaudeau's, her mother's brother was Uncle Willie Benny was killed at the psalm.
Thank you so much. This has just been wonderful. I'm struck, Peggy, by the way you chose to look at the body of Colleen's work. And you summarized those in a slide. I'd love to go back to that slide and get a picture of the way you chose it. But how did you go about that process of looking at the body of work in such a different lens?
It actually began with my kids in the sandbox, and it was a really warm summer day. And I had already started to sort the poems, and I had them, I was out on the picnic table, it was windy, and I had them in piles, and I had stones on them, and they were great. Here's ringing a bell, and I had huge chrysanthemums, orange and yellow, and my kids had auburn hair. And they decided to play not hide and seek, but peekaboo. And they were 1.5 to 4.5, 3.5. And they kept jumping up on the table, like jumping, like pump, up, appearing and appearing. And I just thought, oh my God, you know, it's all just one big sea, you know. and I thought, oh, right, some are really small, like that one solitude, you know, isolation, and some are like this. So it's just the images, like they come from anywhere, and then you find them in the poem. There's lots of ways to organize her poems, but that,
Colleen way.
I suppose, yeah. But that's thank you for asking, because I only remembered the sandbox.
Josh, are there any queries from the online? If not, lots of love from the online. Well, fantastic. Well, I have an. Oh, wow. So Nova Scotia, the whole. Just could you just? I didn't. The whole country. You said Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia all the way to Hornby Island. Right on.
Oh, Janet Parker, we think in Nova Scotia maybe some, and there may be some there's a Farquhar diaspora that's all across the country from. You're so fantastic. I have a question for Roy. Now, this has been fabulous. If we stopped Colleening 2025 right now, and we've still got, obviously, it'll keep going, obviously, as long as you would like it to, but is there anything else that might be happening in a Colleening 2025 way, say in a few days at maybe the Landed branch? Is that, I think this is Roy here, I think, just who can, so my question for Roy.
Well, apparently, what was the day you mentioned? December 3rd.
December the 3rd. That's Wednesday.
So that's Wednesday.
Oh my gosh!
Coming up in a few days. I think, yeah, at 7 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, a number of well-known London writers, at least 3 of whom are here.
Do you mind standing up to anyone who's here who's going to be part? There's.
Yes.
Oh.
Karen Schindler, John Tyndall, David White.
Woo! Patricia.
And James Reaney and Susan Wallace.
Susan Wallace.
And several other people.
And
Jason
yeah.
Dickinson. Dickinson. And,
it's like a rock and roll superstar tour.
Yes. Of everyone I've named, and possibly. I think that's it. And Patricia Black. Yes. Here we are. And Patricia, you are such a lovely reader. My goodness.
Yeah.
Everyone I've mentioned will read at least one of Colleen's poems, and then I'm not sure just what everyone's going to do, but we've set aside about 5 minutes for people to talk about the poem, about Colleen, about how they think about Colleen and the influence. Yeah. And I think it'll be a great evening.
Yeah. Oh.
Yes. Cool. December 3rd.
December 3rd, 7 at the Landon branch. Do not drive on Craig Street. Has it finished? I'll update. Our first 2 years in London, we lived at 17 Craig. So, and the Landon branch was our kind of our home library. Thank you, Roy. That is fabulous. Do drive on Craig Street.
I just have a quick word. First of all, what a great privilege and honor to be here today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Peggy, Jamie, Josh, everybody. I have 2 favorite poems of Colleen's. I won't tell you the other one, which I'll be reading on Wednesday. But the one I read today, as well as being part of Peggy's lecture, I have 4 granddaughters who are sisters. And they were all staying with my husband and I some years ago. And they all live out west, far out west. And so to have them all in the house in one place, and didn't they all go in the bathroom together and comb out their long hair?
Oh. Any other questions? Any other? Peggy, do you have?
This is bringing tears to my eyes, the fact that it is 3 minutes after 7. 7 minutes after 3. Whoa. But I remember doing a lecture on a Thursday night, pub night at Western, and the kids didn't move. They stayed. They wanted to talk more. And I thought, I have died and gone to heaven. I've gone to teacher heaven.
Yeah.
Thank you for all staying,
Yeah,
coming and staying.
I think we've just one more round. Josh, thank you for doing this and for everything you've done for Colleening 2025. And to the Words Festival in general for going, amazing people all the time on words, songs and so forth, and poetry, this event. Now, I'll ask a question. Will this at some point be on the Words YouTube channel? This will be on Words, which is one of you want to subscribe to the Words YouTube channel. This is fantastic. To Dan and Alana, we could not do these things, any of us in the community, without the tremendous levering, am I saying that? From the London Public Library and its family. So thank you for leading the way. And one more time, if we could, Hillary, Patricia, Ola, Peggy. Thank you, friends. I hope to see you. Join us at the Landed Branch on December the 3rd at 7 p.m. Visit ColleenThibaudeau.com and JamesReaney.com. And just for I have a last question. My beloved Susan Wallace, what poem might we be reading on? It's about our daughter and, well.
Grandma Thibaudeau. Sorry, about our daughter, Elizabeth, and Grandma Thibaudeau, down at Port Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And I think we've read it. It's been a kind of the Colleen Thibaudeau, Colleening 2025 staple. This will be about the third or fourth time.
You should be much better at it.
We'll find out. Come and see if I've improved, if I've approached Susan's level in any way. Yeah. Let's go home is, I think, in that poem. Friends, thank you. If you want to stay somewhere and chat informally, by all means. If you do need a parking whatever, I think I have one here, but this is what you need to get out of the parking lot. Yeah. Yes. And Alana, thank you again. Dan, thank you. Woo!
Oh, that's lovely. It's a great photo.
And that's the part where my father was born. It's gone now, unfortunately. Yeah. Outside, it's got